I was raised in a little North Dakota town, about 1,500 people, and I was raised in a Roman Catholic family, very good family, just normal growing up life. I lost my dad when I was 10 years old to a massive heart attack, and it kind of left my mom and my sister and I in just a very unstable place. And for many years we wandered trying to figure out what to do, and then 4 years after my dad passed away, my mom remarried. And after she remarried, I felt sort of abandoned, kind of lost, similar to what I experienced when my dad passed away. And my sister and I both experienced throughout our lives this kind of sense of abandonment and lostness, and both of us went off into different challenges in our lives where we made choices that were very different from the life morals and values that we were taught. And when I was 18 years old, I got pregnant. And I was terrified, let me tell you. People can't often imagine what that's like to be 18 and pregnant and living in a small town and having been raised with the value that you don't have sex before you're married and you don't have an abortion, and how could anyone do that? You know, sometimes the things you're taught and the environment in which you were raised is totally different from what your experience is. So when I was 18, I got pregnant and I panicked. I tried to figure out how I could solve this problem, and my sister knew a woman who had more worldly knowledge than I did about abortion and such things. So I contacted her and asked her how I could get an abortion, and she told me that I could come to Minneapolis and have an abortion and life would be fine. So I ventured to Minneapolis from my little North Dakota town, and I had never driven on freeways before. I had never gone out of North Dakota, and I drove on 494 during rush hour traffic, and I remember driving my car and being terrified and feeling like I was trapped. And it was interesting that on the freeway there was one semi to the left, one to the right, one in front of me and one behind me, and it was just such a picture of what I was feeling in my heart. So I eventually got to the abortion clinic and had the procedure done. I had taken $250 out of my savings account and used that to pay for the abortion. They wanted cash. They didn't take checks. And at that time I didn't have a credit card, so it was just cash. And interesting, while I was at the abortion clinic, there were so many people there, sitting on these plastic chairs, filling out all this paperwork, and nobody really made eye contact with anybody else. We were all there. We all knew why the other people were there, but we were just trying to get through it. And I remember one woman being there and putting a whole bunch of change down on the counter to pay for her abortion because, like I said, they didn't take checks and you had to have all the cash. So went in and had the abortion done, and the counseling I got, it involved a woman saying, "Are you sure you really want to have this procedure done?" And of course I was sure. I wanted to be out of there. I wanted my life to be normal. So I went into the procedure room, and I went through these windowless double doors into this room, and this woman helped me to get undressed, and I sat on a table, and the doctor came in, and I was crying, and the nurse held my hand and she said, "It's going to be okay, everything will be over in a little while." And the procedure began, and I still to this day remember the sound of the vacuum suction machine that took the baby out of my womb and placed this human child into this glass bottle underneath the table. And I wasn't thinking about all those things at that time. I was just thinking, please get me through this and get me back to my normal life. So after I had that abortion, I was just relieved. And most women will say that after they have their abortion, their first response is relief. Phew, I got that over with. I'm done. I can get on with my life. I can get back to what's normal. Well, for me, my life didn't go back to normal. So when I was 21, I found myself pregnant for a fourth time. And with that fourth pregnancy, I was in a real pickle. I had run out of money. I had run out of cash. I lost my job, lost my car. I had been in a series of horrible relationships. I had picked up some hitchhikers and invited them to live with me in my house. And one of the hitchhikers was a very violent person, and he used to hold a knife to my throat and tell me, "You don't have to think, I'll think for you." And I would say to him, "Anything you want, as long as you love me, as long as you just give me that little scrap of love, I'll just do whatever you want." And I had really lost myself. in that environment. So I found out that I was pregnant and really needed to get out of the situation where I was. So I got in my car. I had about $20 in my car, and I drove to Wisconsin. I was thinking, my friend lives there, and surely she'll help me find an abortion, because she's my friend and she'll help me do anything, right? So when I got there, she didn't have any money to help me, and I was so angry. I just remember feeling like I have got to get out of this mess. And every time before, I'd been able to escape. I'd been able to get an abortion. I'd been able to solve it. But this time I had no escape. So I was forced to consider what to do next. So I remember calling in the middle of the night, looking for different places to help me, looking through the phone book, calling places, and I came across an organization, and I said, I need to get an abortion help. And they said, well, we don't do abortions, but maybe we could help you with something called adoption. And I was like, adoption? I never thought about that. That wasn't going to solve my problem. That wasn't going to keep people from knowing that I had been sexually active, that I was out there doing what I was doing. It wasn't going to solve it for me, because I would have to face this baby, and who wants to do that? So as I talked to the woman, I realized I had to deal with my situation. I couldn't escape. So we began to talk, and I needed a place to live. So I started talking with a woman that they had through their organization that did something called shepherding homes. And she took me into her home, and I lived with her for $20 a week, and began to start settling down and trying to think about my life and think about what was my future going to be like, and what should I do about this baby. And for the first time in my life, I actually started thinking about the other person involved in my crisis, and that was my unborn child. And it's just so amazing to me now, looking back, how easy it was to be selfish, how easy it was to only think about me, and how the fear that I was in drove me to do that, to just think about me. I'm going to survive one way or another, and I don't really care who gets hurt. And for many of the women that I deal with today, I find that same attitude. It's about me, and we've been told in our culture, it's my body, my choice, and very rarely are we challenged to think about the other person involved in that crisis, and that's that unborn child. So I ended up having my son. I decided to make an adoption plan for my son, and he was born in March of 1982, and he was a beautiful baby boy, and he's now 30 years old and has a great life. He's made some choices in his life that are not so terrific, but I did as well. But I always tell people, as long as there's life, there's hope for us to change and make different choices. So we have what's called an open adoption situation with him. So we've been in touch with him his whole life, and we know where he's at. And that's been a real comfort to me, to know where he's at and to know that he's fine. So after I had him, I didn't necessarily change my heart. I changed the outward stuff. I stopped smoking and drinking and started doing all the socially unacceptable things that I was doing. But I didn't really change my heart. I didn't change the real reasons why I was choosing to do those things. And it was shortly after I had my son that I met my husband, and he started talking to me about having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And at first I thought, well, this guy's cute, I'll talk to him, my old way of thinking. And but he had a different message for me. He had a message about God's love and forgiveness, restoration, and peace that we could have when we know a personal relationship with Christ. And that's made me think about my selfishness, and it made me think about the fact that there was a way to solve my sin problem, and that was through confession of my sin. I found in the Bible where it says that there's no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus, and that really made sense to me, because I was feeling a lot of condemnation. I was feeling a lot of pain from my sin. I also found in Isaiah where it says, though my sins are as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow.